I've often been asked the question as to the real difference between Cree court and the rest of the provincial court. Now, I certainly have many answers to that, but I think the place to start is to look at what is similar with respect to provincial court and Cree court. Well, the setting is the same in terms of operating out of a makeshift courtroom that is the same as any rural setting. And also, we open and close court with all the same trappings of all rise, etc., etc. We swear in witnesses, perhaps in different ways, of anything from the Bible to affirmation to use of sweetgrass, if anybody ever asked for that, or this day and age, the Quran. So anything that will accommodate what is in front of you. We certainly use the same rules of procedure and evidentiary laws as any other court. I mean, that's a given. You deal with the law that's in front of you. Some of the more obvious differences, and probably the main one, is that the whole court party is Aboriginal. From the judge up to the court clerks, they're all Aboriginal people. The prosecutor, the legal aid, and we have two clerks that we deal with because they both speak Cree. One can act as an interpreter for any of the parties that want to use an interpreter in Cree, and mostly lawyers. But at the outset, we let people know, the people that are appearing before us, that it is their choice as to how they address us in terms of Cree or English. The choice is theirs. I, right from the start, responded in terms of who was appearing before me. By that I mean, I adjust, because quite often you find people, they will start in English, they get stumped with something, they switch over to Cree, they go back to English. I do the same. If a person starts off English, I start off English. If they switch to Cree, I switch to Cree. It's not the rigidity of the process that's important, it's the communication that's important. So I don't waste time worrying about how the tape recorder is taping all this. It's what is happening between the party in front of me and the court. That's what's important. So I learn to adjust, and sometimes I learn new words. Now, some of the differences that not every observer can see unless they communicate in Cree, and the subtle difference between our two cultures. That comes in a manner of how I communicate with the person and what it is I'm looking for when I'm dealing with people. It's fine to deal with the words of being interpreted in English, Cree, of the evidence. But when I'm communicating with a person, I'm also looking at trying to understand who it is that's in front of me. Now, aside from the trials, of course, provincial court deals with a lot of sentencing. 90% of our work deals with sentencing, by guilty pleas or otherwise. So we have to be really proficient in how we deal with that particular issue. So when I start looking at who is in front of me, I think in terms of Cree. I think in Cree. And I will come up with concepts of, I'll say that, Tantua ansin no taga kautskai gapoe, e matsatsit, e gitimagisit, agachi gagipatsit. Who is in front of me? Is it a person who is really criminal in nature? A person who is really downtrodden in relation to his addictions and the problems that derive from there, and lack of social skills? Or am I dealing with a person who has missed his road of life with some stupid act? You're dealing with people in those subtle categories. Imatsatsit, the word imatsatsit, goes to the concept of the whole person. Not just that singular act, but the culmination of all the different acts and how he relates in that community. How is he seen in that community? How do his relatives relate to him? Do they relate to him because matsahis kapiwana dot kapi matsaga migisit? That's the things you hear. Monene po gagipatsa, monene patsiepinige, monene gitimatsa, uste matsaya, uste matsatsa. Those are very clear concepts of who the people are in front of you. Is that something you easily see in Cree court? Not unless you understand the language and the concepts of what is being communicated to the Cree court. That is not always easily explainable to any particular given case, but it is something that I have learned for years. Now, Cree court is not something new in a sense of how long it's been in the minds of different people to have our own court in different ways. Because I know back in the 70s, aside from my discussions with Judge Fafard, there has been different chiefs, different leaders throughout history that have said, we need to develop our own system. We need to use our language. All those things have come to some fruition in a small way to what Cree court is. So, the other day I was reminded how long I've been involved in this process when Judge Deshay, who just retired from North Balfour, wrote a letter to me and said, enclosed in a letter was a letter I wrote in 1977. And in that letter, I wrote to the RCMP. And I said, I have been doing court interpretation, Cree to English for you. But I'm telling you that I will no longer do it, but I have found somebody else for you. And might I remind you or point out to you that it is up to the Crown to make sure that there's proper interpretation in court. So that was back in 77, in having those type of discussions, the importance of language. Because people needed to communicate and make sure that they were heard within the criminal justice system.